Hey, it's the Comics Kid 2099, and I'm here to review a graphic novel. Specifically, this graphic novel, X-Men, Endangered Species. This was an ongoing story in the back of all the main X-Men books at the time, in 2007. It was told in the back of X-Factor, New X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men, and Uncanny X-Men. The first thing I want to say about this book is that it's really awesome how it gets into Henry McCoy's head. Henry McCoy, or the Beast, he is the main character of this story, and usually in X-Men books you don't get a whole lot of narration boxes that really allow you to get into the character's head, because X-Men is a team book, and so almost always you're dealing with the entire team, and you don't get to get into one character's head unless it's for maybe an issue, like Life Death. Yet this book does an incredible job of showing us all kinds of different ways that Henry McCoy is thinking. We get to see everything that he goes through throughout this couple of weeks of him trying to find a cure for mutants becoming an endangered species. And if this was a normal X-Men book with the whole team present, then we could still see him doing these things, but since this is basically a Beast solo story, we also get to hear his thoughts and get to see how he reacts to what he's doing and what he's seeing. And I like that a lot. It's a nice change of pace for X-Men stories. The other thing that I really liked about this book is that it really is interesting to see the process of deductive reasoning in the Marvel Universe. In a world where someone who dies can come back to life the next week, and you don't really have any immutable laws of physics like you do in the real world, it's interesting to see characters whose lives are defined by laws of reality and how they respond to these things. What would they do if they're trying to find the answer to some question that's eluding them? Throughout this whole book, Beast is still defined by science, which to him always has logical answers and logical rules that follows. Even though this is a world where magic exists, alternate realities exist, super science exists that won't ever exist for us, or if it does, it'll be 50, 60 years from now. And it's still really interesting to see these characters going through a certain process, trying to find certain ways to arrive at these answers. Those are really the only two things about this story that I did like. Since Beast is the only character who really features in this story, you would think that this would be his story. But really, he doesn't go through any kind of character arc that satisfies me. We see very early on that he's willing to go to incredible depths in order to solve this problem that has been eluding them ever since the end of House of M. We see that he's contacted all of these supervillains and he wants them to help him, and when that doesn't turn out too well for him, then we see him go on his little quest. If he's willing to go to such lows just to solve this problem at the beginning of the story, then how can we see him go through some kind of arc at the end of the story? It'd be one thing if Beast had some sort of moral problem with contacting the supervillains, and then by the end of the story we saw that he no longer had that problem. That would be an arc of some kind. But we really don't see him go through that kind of arc, do we? Near the end of the story, we see Doctor Strange take Beast on a tour of the multiverse, and we get to see that all the other Beasts and all these other alternate realities, they're going on a similar quest that Beast is going on. And while our Beast has been going about this through a scientific way, he gets to see that other Beasts have been going about this in other ways. Some of them have been using violence, some of them have been using magic, some of them have just had different luck in different areas than he has. And yet, by the end of this book, I really don't get the sense that Beast has decided, yeah, maybe I can consult a magician, maybe that will help me. You would think, after seeing all these other Beasts with just as much conviction in their fields of expertise as he has, you would think maybe our Beast would find it maybe a little bit easier to consult other areas that at first he thought were preposterous. And yet, he doesn't. He still goes on thinking that science is the only answer. Or at least, that's what it seems like to me. Ultimately, I'm just not really sure this book has any purpose or reason to exist at all. Much as I really don't like the House of M storyline, at the end of the book, when we're getting to see all across the world, mutants have been decimated, and there's less than 300 of them left, well, even though status quo can be fluid, to say the least, I'm pretty sure at the end of House of M, nobody said, I don't believe it, in a couple weeks it'll all be fixed. They knew, for the time being, that mutants were an endangered species. And then if they didn't believe it, they got to see through 3 or 4 different miniseries that, yeah, mutants are losing their powers now. This is a thing. So then we get Endangered Species, a 200-page story that basically tells us that no matter what we think, there's absolutely no way that mutants can go back to being around after they've been decimated by the Scarlet Witch. The very next month, we have another storyline, Messiah Complex, where, out of nowhere, a mutant kid is born. Okay, but this book just spent 200 pages telling us that that was impossible. Beast went down every nook and cranny trying to find some way for this to happen, and they kept telling us, no, it's not going to happen, no, it's impossible, sorry, it's hopeless, this is a dead end, and then, well, we were kidding, a mutant kid is born. It's kind of weird, isn't it? What's the point of even doing a story where Beast finds out that there's no hope for the mutant race if in the very next month you see that a mutant kid is born, making this entire miniseries pointless? The comic book industry is done in such a way where they are dominated by big events. You see an event like Endangered Species, that leads into Messiah Complex, that leads into Messiah War, all of that leads into Necrotia, which leads into Second Coming, which leads into Age of X, that leads into Avengers vs. X-Men, and it never ends. These stories, they're always a means into a new story. They're not a means unto themselves, and Endangered Species is no different. The only reason this story exists is because House of M set it up, and the only reason it exists here is to set up Messiah Complex. It's just a big, huge chain, and there's no end in sight. I'm going to have to say, you really don't have to buy Endangered Species. Not so much because it's bad, although, if I'm being honest, it's really not a good story. Mostly, it's just kind of pointless, like I said. If you want to know the gist of it, Beast finds out that the mutant race is doomed, and then the very next month after this story ends, he finds out he was wrong. That's it. That's really all I had to say about this book. If you liked it, I'm interested to see why you liked it in the comments below. And if you like this video, I'd love to see you give this video a thumbs up. And remember, I'm the Comics Kid 2099, and I need to clean my claws. I'll see you next time.